Man, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another reaction. Today we're gonna react to when you cast real kids from the slums. Let's check it out.
This is City of God, probably the most realistic crime film ever made, and by many
Man, the City of God, I haven't watched the full movie, but I've seen clips on YouTube and stuff like that when I was a little younger. But shit looks good. I need to watch it.
considered one of the greatest crime films of all time. While it's often called the Brazilian Goodfellas, City of God is nothing like your traditional gangster film. It has no famous actors, no gangsters in suits like The Godfather, and it's no rags to riches story like Scarface.
Your son made it, mama. It's a success.
City of God does not romanticize crime in any shape or form. Instead, it shows the bleak lives of kids growing up in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, struggling to survive another day. But director Fernando Meirelles didn't want professional actors to perform this story. He wanted people who had actually seen it, felt it, and lived it. Therefore, the people you see on screen aren't actors. They are actual residents of the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, standing in front of the camera for the very first time. While journalists had been writing about how dangerous these neighborhoods were for decades, and even documentaries had been made about it, nobody outside of Brazil was paying any attention to them.
Nobody wanted to put any money on the film because everybody was saying that this would be a flop. Because unknown actors, very violent story, inside favelas, nobody is interested in seeing favela, that's what they tell me.
But when City of God came out in 2002, it did something no article or documentary ever managed to do. It put you inside that world so convincingly that it went on to be screened in over 100 countries and earned 4 Academy Award nominations. So today I want to dive into the story of City of God and show you how it became one of the most realistic crime films ever made. But in order to understand how, we first need to get a better understanding of where this story started. City of God is based on a true story and is narrated by a young boy named Rocket, who grows up in the slums of Rio de Janeiro. In the 1960s, the Brazilian government relocated poor locals from central Rio to the suburbs, clearing out valuable land under the promise of giving them better lives. They moved them to housing projects on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro, one of which was Cidade de Deus. The name was a bold promise, but in reality it was nothing like it. City of God was a wasteland with no jobs and no infrastructure, and in just a decade, City of God became one of the most violent places in Brazil.
Mas na Cidade de Deus, se correr o bicho pega, e se ficar o bicho come.
The story
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I've seen too many videos on the internet of crimes happening in the favelas of Brazil and stuff like that. I'm not visiting Brazil. Another place I'm not visiting is Mexico. I'm sorry.
revolves around the lives of 3 friends, referred to as the Tender Trio, who grow up in a city where poverty and crime have become the way of life. Alongside them, there is a kid named Lil Dice, who enjoys killing people just for the fun of it, which already tells you enough about how crazy things are about to get. The movie shows the rise of these innocent kids into ruthless gangsters, but our narrator Rocket is not like the other characters in the film. He is not interested in becoming a gangster or a drug dealer. Instead, he's passionate about photography and wants to capture the true essence of life in the city through his camera, and so he set off on a journey through the lens of his camera. But to truly understand Rocket, let's spin back to the real person his character is based on. A man who grew up in the real Cidade de Deus. His name is Paulo Lins. Paulo Lins wrote the book Cidade de Deus, that the movie is based on, and spent 8 years of his life documenting all the violence around him.
Morrer inocente morre há muitos anos. Eu vi muitos amigos meus morrerem. Meu pai, minhas tias, sobrinho que morreu novo. Isso são as coisas mais fortes da minha vida, né? Mas isso é muito pessoal, isso acontece na vida de todo mundo. Isso foi uma coisa que tanto é que eu escrevi sobre isso, né?
A few years after the book was published, director Fernando Meirelles read it and wanted to share the story with the rest of the world by adapting it into a film. But there was one problem. He couldn't get any funding for the movie, because studios didn't think there would be any demand for a story quite like this. And so he decided to take the risk and invest his own money for the sake of the story.
I decided to finance the film myself. For the last 10 years I had got some money. I got money doing commercials, so I had some And I decided to invest in my own film just because I couldn't stop. I was so involved.
The most important thing for director Fernando Meirelles and co-director Katja Lund when creating City of God was authenticity. And so in order to find the right people to tell the story, they had to go back to its origins.
I knew my biggest challenge would be cast. Because in Brazil, even if I wanted, there wasn't this amount of young black actors at all. I mean, you could count like 2, 3, and maybe not the best ones. So I knew from the beginning that to shoot this film, I would have to create actors.
During pre-production, they went to the favelas and housing projects of Rio de Janeiro and ran free acting workshops for the local children, not telling them that it was for a film.
And we invited people who was interested on a workshop on acting. I never mentioned we was gonna make a film after the workshop. It was just free workshop. They would get the tickets, the bus ticket, and sandwich and Coke.
Hundreds of kids from these communities came to the workshops, none of them having any acting experience. And by letting them improvise scenes from the movie, they were able to see their raw and genuine performances without any pressure or filters.
And we had a lot of people interested. I selected 200 boys. So we would do 3 groups every day for a month. In the end of the exercises, we would ask them to improvise scenes. Well, let's suppose you're a policeman, you're a drug dealer. And of course, they were improvising the scenes of the film. So they start rehearsing the film without knowing that that was part of the film. When we shot the film, they knew the scenes more or less. And they never got the script. They were allowed to improvise and to change positions, so they were almost playing themselves. That's why
That's filthy, so they could be a little more authentic with their acting and shit like that. That's dope, because I feel like if you gotta follow a strict script or whatever, you can kind of fuck your shit up. Like, I don't know.
But besides the 17-year-old Rocket, who had never faced a camera before, one of the most memorable and iconic roles of the film is the character of Lil Zay, the main antagonist of the story, played by Leandro Firmino. Lil Zay, aka Zay Pequeno, is one of the most horrifying characters ever to appear in film, and the brutal monster that Lil Zay is unfortunately not a creation of fiction, but a real person who once lived in and terrorized the favelas of Rio de Janeiro. The actor who played him, however, actually was from the City of God, and had no ambitions whatsoever to become an actor. He only went to the workshop to keep his friends company. When we first meet Lil Zay as a kid, he calls himself Lil Dice, and he appears to be just an oversmart boy, but we soon realize he enjoys participating in violence and killing people.
Aí, vamos pra tu. A cabeleira, tu vai precisar.
Throughout the film, we really start to despise him because of his attitude and actions. When he grows up, he gives himself the title Lil Zay, and wears that title like a godlike figure. Lil Zay is not your typical Hollywood villain whose violence is somehow justified. Apart from the fact that he lives in this ruthless city, he has no reasons to kill, but he still chooses to, because it gives him some kind of pleasure. In one of the most shocking scenes of the film, we see Lil Zay and his gang forcing a young child who is barely old enough to hold a gun to shoot another innocent kid, just to prove himself, even asking him if he wants to be shot in the hand or the foot. At that moment, we really get to see the true nature of Lil Zay's brutality, and just how senseless the violence really is. Because violence for him is merely a fun activity. While the kid does it because he wants to survive, Lil Zay simply enjoys the thrill of it.
Escolhe, moleque. Quer tomar o tiro aonde? No pé ou na mão?
No pé ou na mão?
Na mãozinha, né?
Despite never having acted before, Leandro Firmino ended up playing one of the most terrifying and realistic villains in film history, and the kid who's getting shot in the foot was only 5 years old, somehow delivering an incredibly realistic performance which makes you hold your breath throughout the entire scene. But the reason that City of God feels so realistic is not only due to the casting of these kids, it was also their specific filmmaking process and how they went about shooting these scenes. Director Fernando Meirelles intentionally didn't show them a script or made these kids hit certain marks, because performing would have felt too forced. Instead, the cameraman would be like a fly on the wall, observing how these kids would react to one another in certain situations.
There was a script, because I never showed them any script. So I said, today we're gonna do that scene that you come here and you ask him, and that's how we would, rehearse, and then shoot. Watch the film carefully. You see that there's no continuity at all. I would never give them marks to hit, Just let them play like a theater play, like a performance. And our cameraman, our DP, Cesar Shaloni, prepared the light. There was no stands on the set, and he would just grab as a documentary the thing really happening. And that's how we shot. And that's why it feels so authentic.
This guerrilla style of filmmaking is what makes City of God feel so realistic. And it works so well because of how style and substance support each other. Because the film was shot on multiple locations high up in the favelas that were notoriously hard to reach, the crew was small and the gear had to be light. The handheld cameras didn't just make the crew more flexible, it also gave the film this documentary style look that added to the story's narrative of its gritty, raw and unstable environment, which in and of itself wasn't perfect either. That's why the main thing that immediately stands out when you first see City of God is its unique visual style. The film was shot on analog 16mm cameras, which on the one hand were chosen because they're cheaper, lighter and easier to move around. But the lower quality film also adds a lot of grain and rawness to the image. And for the wide landscape shots, higher quality 35mm film was used, giving the movie this nostalgic image of Rio de Janeiro. But another unique aspect is the way the story is beautifully told through the use of color and editing. The story takes place across 3 decades, the 60s, the 70s and the 80s. In the 60s, gangs are just starting to form, and the city is slowly deteriorating, so the color palette is warm and yellowish, and the editing has a natural, unhurried rhythm. By the 70s, coldness starts to take over, the editing starts to get more chaotic, and the color palette shifts with it, becoming colder and more unsaturated. And by the 80s, we're in a full-blown drug war, and the entire film is draped in a dark, monotone atmosphere. As these kids grow up from the 60s to the 80s, the environment of the City of God grows more and more dangerous. The characters go from naive children coming to terms with the world to ruthless criminals. The only thing that remains constant.
That's crazy how little editing tricks can really change the way or the vibe of the whole movie. Little subtle things really change how you perceive the whole movie and shit like that. That shit is so crazy.
Constant is the killing. They kill as kids and they kill as adults.
Tu ouviu, moleque? Tem que formar com nós aqui, senão tu tá fudido. Galinha, tu tá morto.
The world of City of God is one without authority, where the young makes the rules. But it's frightening how young these kids actually are. They play with guns like they are toys, and are praying before shootouts but have no real concept of life or death. These kids simply don't know any better. This is the life they were born into.
Por que você vai querer ser quando você crescer? Ah, não sei não. Mas eu não quero ser nem bandido nem policial. Ué, por quê? Ah, porque eu tenho medo de tomar tiro.
Thanks, Mike.
See you next month.
So you can get these delivered? It's literally water.com.
Think about the world you grew up in, the role models you had, and the examples of success around you. Now imagine that none of that existed. You have no one to guide you, barely have any education, and no idols to positively influence you. That is the world of City of God.
Mas para o governo e os ricos, não importava o nosso problema. Como eu disse, a cidade de Deus fica muito longe do cartão postal do Rio de Janeiro.
In a place like City of God, the gangsters are the success story. They are the ones with the money, the clothes, and the respect. For most of these kids, becoming a gangster is the fastest way of achieving success and power. And so the only question becomes whether you're willing to do what it takes to get it. Even though our narrator Rocket faces the same poverty, peer pressure and temptations as his peers, he finds a legitimate escape route and purpose through the lens of his camera. While all the other characters choose violence, Rocket uses art as his weapon and channels his ambition into a passion for photography rather than gang violence.
Tá bom aqui?
Tá ótimo.
Nobody expected City of God to become this popular. It had no English dialogue, not a single known face, and a cast with no experience. And yet, it earned 4 Academy Award nominations.
Cesar Charlone for City of God.
Danielle Resende for City of God.
Braulio Mantovani for City of God.
For City of God, Fernando Meireles.
On top of that, City of God sits on every list of the greatest films ever made, and inspired a whole new wave of Brazilian cinema.
There was several, 10 or 12 films came right after with the same environment, same kind of characters. So it became really like a wave of films that revealed this world for Brazil, which was good.
But for Brazil itself, not everyone agreed on its reputation of the city. Its authenticity was questioned for poor representation, stating that it reduced an entire community to its worst moments, showing the world the violence while leaving out everything else. But according to its directors, visibility, even painful visibility, was better than silence. The sad reality is that many young boys and girls who appeared in the film went back to the neighborhoods they came from, and some struggled to find any work at all. But even though the movie couldn't save all the lives of these
It's
kids.
crazy that some of the kids end up going back, to be honest. Like, they should have been paid well, living good, but I mean, maybe this is before the movie even blew up or whatever, so, but damn, that's just crazy.
It still managed to leave a mark on everyone, the ones who watched it, as well as everyone involved in it.
And so City of God was a very important book, especially for the story of the favelas in Brazil. How powerful it was, that journey. It was a story of the country, of what was happening. But he did in a beautiful way that it was so cinematic that people all over the world loved it. But we did like never thinking that it would take that size, and it changed my life.
City of God is a film that doesn't give you easy answers. By the end of the film, kids are the winners within Cidade de Deus, and they are the ones left in charge. But as the last shot of the film shows, while one cycle ends, another begins. The next generation of children will likely grow up to kill more people. City of God is probably the greatest gangster film of them all. It shows that most gangsters in the world don't monologue about family and wear suits and ties. Most people affected by gangs are born in poverty and are drawn into conflict. City of God is about that reality. There is no glamour in this world. It may not be the most celebrated gangster film by the majority of people, but no other crime film has ever come close to the truth. Because poverty and gang conflict don't end when the credits roll. This story is still happening somewhere in the world right now. If you want to watch one of the films that directly influenced City of God, I highly recommend checking out Bijaj, The Law of the Weakest. An incredible...
Man, I appreciate you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And we gon' turn up, man.